succumb to an illness anyway because they were under constant stress. When you love your life and body, miraculous things happen. Why do they happen? What goes on in our minds and bodies when faith, hope, and love are present in our lives? So let's start here.
I was cloning stem cells 44 years ago. And at that time, there were just a handful of us in the entire world that even knew what stem cells were. The experiments I did in the stem cell cultures revealed a truth that genes do not control their biology. A gene is a blueprint, but it doesn't have an ability to know when it should be activated or when it should not. A gene doesn't know what's going on in the world around it. And yet we talk about genes turning on and off and making decisions. And when you do that, then you say, well, then it's the gene's decisions, not your decisions, that control your life. And that concept called genetic determinism, genes control your traits, makes us victims of our heredity. So if there's cancer running in your family, Alzheimer's, diabetes running in your family, we have a belief, oh, these genes control these traits and I'm a recipient of these genes and my future will have these diseases in them. And we buy into that belief when it turns out to be totally false.
The choices we make every day have a dramatic effect on how you're going to look, how you're going to feel, and what category of the population you're going to fall into. And when you look at the statistics, they're staggering. Almost 1 in every 2 people develop cancer now in the United States. These things don't just happen to you. They happen because of our choices. There is the rare case of the person who is born with this issue.
Science perceives of the body as a vehicle. My biological body is like a car. And what we have looked at in regard to health and disease is, oh, when the vehicle isn't working right, there's a breakdown of the vehicle. And then we blame the vehicle. So, the parts don't work right, the genes don't work right, the biochemistry is off. And this is a problem for the simple reason is conventional biology sees the body as a gene-driven, computerized vehicle. So if there's anything wrong with the system, we go to the genes and look at what's going wrong. The biology is not driven by the genes. It's driven by our response to the world, our perceptions, and how we deal with the world. Yes, the body is a mechanical vehicle. Maybe 5, maybe 10% of disease is actually because the vehicle was built incorrectly at the start. But the issue is they've left the driver out of the vehicle. And if you go to the junkyard, for example, and you got all these cars all junked there, and I say, how many of these cars are in here because the vehicle failed? And how many of these cars are in here because the driver failed? And the significance is about the same percentage as in our health issues. About 90% of those cars in there because of driver error.
The universe, the stars. It looks like a typical night. The perfect ratio of gases and elements from over billions of years. Out of what appears to be nothing visible to the eye, and then this. A miraculous Big Bang and symphony of matter. A solid mass forms. Life begins. Who could have imagined this? Is anything impossible? Or is everything possible? Sometimes we see things differently from what they appear to be. Perceptions. It's all based upon our beliefs. How do they affect our lives, our health?
The most significant factor that affects a cell is what is going on in the environment. The cells are designed by nature to accommodate and adapt whatever's ever going on in their environment. So this is why organisms can stay alive in a world that is dynamically changing. Because if genes said, this is your mechanical way you run your biology, and the world dynamically changes, and I'm still using the old gene program, it doesn't work. So nature was more intelligent. Nature said, I'll make genes adjustable in response to the environment. Cells directly read the environment and adjust their genetics. But humans the cells that make up our body don't directly read the environment. It's the nervous system of our body reads the environment, interprets it, and then sends the signals to my cells. So between the environment and my cells, now I have something called perception. It's not always the environment that directly controls our cells, it's our perception of the environment.
What researchers have found is there are essentially two fundamental emotions that are at the root of all that we will experience, and they are simply the emotions of fear and the emotions of love. Whether or not we sense fear or love in a given situation is a factor that's largely determined by our perceptions. If I'm in fear, I say, am I in fear? I'm in love. Well, okay, if I'm in fear, honor that. I'm definitely in fear. Now, what is the perception that's leading me to sense that fear? Does it make sense? Is it a reasonable perception? And this is where our thoughts come in to help us to understand the logic if our response makes sense in the presence of a given situation.
I believe illness and emotionality are very, very, very closely connected. I was feeling resentful about certain things. I was feeling angry. I was feeling sometimes helpless. I was feeling like obligated.
I actually fought for 8 weeks with my insurance company. They always say, you know, keep all the stress out of your life because that's what causes your cancer in the first place is you know, the stress factor. And here I was battling with an insurance company and it was very, very stressful.
You know, you can't mess around. Everything we think, everything we say, everything has a continuation to it. I could see my part in this. I don't think it's the only thing that creates it. But I think there are other elements come together with that element to create it. I knew the emotions that were there. I just didn't realize the consequence of allowing myself to go to those places and indulge myself.
Where does the chemistry of the blood come from? The answer is the brain is the chemist. It releases the chemistry into the blood through our thoughts. So the chemistry that's released comes from the brain, yeah, but what determines which of the chemicals are released by the brain? The answer is your thoughts and your beliefs and your perceptions, your mind interpreting the world. I'm sitting here right now, I close my eyes, I open up my eyes, and there's someone I love in front of me. My perception of someone I love causes me to release chemicals like dopamine, the pleasure chemical, oxytocin, the chemical that causes us to have bonding and relationships together. It causes the release of serotonin and growth hormones. These are hormones that, when they get into the blood, enhance our body's health and maintenance of the body and the growth of the body. And that's why when you open your eyes and you're in love, biologically, you're feeding the best nutrition and information to the cells possible. If I would take the chemistry of negative thoughts, which are stress hormones, cortisol, inflammatory agents, and add those to my culture dish, my cells would ultimately die out in that culture environment. It's the chemistry of the body that regulates the behavior and genetics of the cell, and the chemistry of the body is controlled by the brain releasing all these different modulators of our health.
When we feel stressed, when we are frightened, when we live our lives in perpetual and chronic fear, that is a very different kind of signal. And I'm not going to say it's right or wrong or good or bad, because all of these signals serve us in one way or another. Chronic, perpetual stress, chronic, perpetual fear shuts down the ability to create the healing in our bodies because we are in what is called fight or flight. And that kind of an experience signals our heart to tell our brain to create the hormones, cortisol for example, and high levels of adrenaline that prepare us for the fight or flight that we're perceiving.
The one side of the coin is love releases chemicals that enhance your growth and your energy, and that's why it's so healthy to be in love. And the flip side of that coin is if you open your eyes and there's not someone you love, but something that scares you, something that threatens you, then the chemistry that's released from the brain is designed to protect you. Well, to protect you, if I have to run away from a lion or whatever it is, then I want to allocate all of the energy for my fight or flight. Otherwise, I'm not going to survive. So protection says, when I get in protection, I have to put all my energy into protection. I say, yeah, but what was that energy doing before you needed protection? Oh, it was providing for my growth. Then the moment you get into protection, you take the energy you were using for growth and now you save that to run away from the lion. I go, yeah, so it basically says, when you're in protection, you actually shut down the growth and maintenance of the system. Now, nature didn't make a mistake in doing this, because nature's intention was, in the world that we used to live in, you didn't need that fight or flight all the time. And when you needed it, if the lion did come, you ran away from the lion, and if you got away from the lion, then you went right back into growth again. You cannot sustain life in protection, because the chemicals of protection short-circuit the growth of the body to use that energy for running away. In the world of the old days, we used to just use that occasionally. In the world today, 24/7, 365, we were never designed to be that long in a compromised growth state. And that's why the health issues in our world are going out of control, because the fear is causing the chemicals to be released into the culture medium of the body that shut down its growth. And the stress hormones shut off the immune system.
So, if genes are not in charge, what is making the decisions which lead to our acquiring a specific disease at a certain time in our lives? Your beliefs shape your experiences of health and healing, just as negativity can short-circuit wellness and recovery. Positive thought and emotions can ignite, strengthen, and extend the protections afforded by your immune system.
Every thought creates form on some level. And all that our physical experience is a reflection of our thoughts.
Your genes aren't fixed. They are modified and adjusted to your response to the world, which is an infinitely variable range. So everything in our world, though, every thought that we have is in some way feeding back. We are all familiar with a concept called the placebo effect. Take a drug or a surgery or whatever it is I do, and I so believe in it, I get healed. And then we find out later, well, let's say that drug that you believed in turns out to be a sugar pill. And we say, then basically, well, the sugar pill didn't heal you. So what did heal you? And the answer is, my thoughts healed me. There's the consequence of negative thinking. And the negative thinking is called nocebo effect. It's not whether it's positive or negative, it's the power of thinking. Power of thinking is equally powerful, but positive thinking takes you in a healthy direction. Negative thinking can actually kill you.
Oftentimes people will say, so do you mean that I'm not well in my life because I've invited it in? Are you saying that I've called this to myself, that I've asked for this? And I want to say back to you, no, and yes, there is a both and in this picture. Of course, no one says, gosh, I think I'm going to do cancer, in the next 20 years. That isn't how it happens on a conscious level. But what we have done is chosen the things that will limit us, will limit our vitality, will limit our ability to self-heal. And so the byproduct of that is cancer, is disease.
I could eat a perfect, healthy, let's say macrobiotic diet. Some people think that's what the greatest diet is. And yet I have beliefs about my life that are not supporting my health. That's why I got disease in the first place. So I say, okay, well then I'm just going to eat this food and this will compensate. And I go, no, it doesn't. You can still eat the food, but if you still have the same thoughts, the chemistry of the thoughts are what causing the illness, not the food.